All right, so if you've been watching our videos, you know that in the rear, we actually have a kit that we designed, which is a Dynapro single using the Sport rotor. Now, we have something much different over on the table here. So Kyle, tell me what we have.
So what we have here is what we believe to be the largest rear brake caliper kit for NA and NB Miatas.
All right, so diving into the kit over here, it looks like we have a massive 11.75 inch by 0.81 inch rotor, which is the same as we run on the front of the car. We have some brackets. We also have these hats, these rotor hats here that look a little bit different. So tell me about these.
So we designed these to be interchangeable with the front and the rear. So the lower mounting point is for the rear rotor and the higher is for the front.
Okay, so you only need one spare hat then, huh?
Yes.
All right, and it looks over here like we have the Superlite caliper. Are these the same as the front?
Yes, but with a smaller piston size.
Okay. And then looks like we got some hardware, some fittings, proportioning valve. Is that proportioning valve going to be required?
Yes, because of how massive these rotors or calipers are.
Okay. It looks like we got some lines here as well. So let's dive in and get these swapped over from our Dynapro single over to this massive Superlite kit. All right, so it looks like we're going to start assembling the rotor here. So what do you have in your hand there?
So we have here some high temperature red Loctite.
Okay, and then we have the hardware. So the hardware is Wilwood hardware, and it's got these little holes in there. What are the holes for?
Those are for safety wire.
Okay, so we're gonna put these in place. Now we have two positions on these. This is gonna be for the rear, so it looks like you have this in the lower position.
Correct.
All right, let's get this thing assembled. All right, making progress here on the rotors. While I finish up, Kyle's gonna go ahead and let's start uninstalling the current kit we have in the rear. All right, the rotors are all prepped. Now, I'm not an expert in safety wire, but what I do know is you want to make sure that the tension is always tightening the bolt. So as you see here, it's pulling the top of the bolt clockwise down to this bolt, which is being pulled clockwise from the bottom. And roughly the same thing's happening here on the top to the bottom. Some of these aren't in perfect alignment, but that's the best I could do. I think that's going to work for now. And remember, we did use Loctite and torque these. On to the next step. Now it's time to prep the calipers. So we have our calipers here, and if you notice this sticker, we have 1/8 inch by 27 NTP. So we want to get the sticker pulled, and you'll notice when you pull these stickers, you always get crap left behind. We want to make sure that that's going to be nice and clean for us because we don't want that stuff re-entering the caliper. I have my fittings here that we'll put in, as well as the thread sealant. So let's get these things cleaned up and get them installed. So here I have my liquid PTFE. Because these are NTP, that means the threads are going to seal. On the other side of this adapter, we have our 3AN, and we have this nice area here, this flared end. That's going to be our seal on the AN fitting. But on the NTP, we need to have this sealant. So the liquid PTFE, that should hold up well to the brake fluid, and we'll go ahead and put this, just a nice thin layer all the way across, and then we can go ahead and tighten this into the caliper. Now what we want to do is get this hand tight, and then once it's completely hand tight, we're going to tighten it with a wrench an additional 1.5 turns. All right, so 1.5 turns, not so much. On this guy, about 2 turns felt about right. On this one, we actually were closer to about 3.5 or 4. So I know the general rule of thumb is actually about 1.5, 2 turns, but in this case, these definitely felt like they needed a little bit more torque. So feel that out. I do not have the exact foot-pound specification, but you want to put a decent amount. My guess would be somewhere in the 30-ish range is about what I was putting on these with a wrench when they started to feel good. All right, with the calipers prepped, next step, we are going to prep our bias adjuster. Now, the way that we're going to use this bias adjuster, this is actually going to take place of the T that's normally in the rear brake system. And what the T does, if you see here, we have the line coming in from the brake master cylinder, one going to the passenger side caliper. This goes up and over the subframe to the driver's side caliper. So we're going to be replacing this, and we're actually going to replace it with this proportioning valve. So with this proportioning valve, we have 2 of these brass fittings. We're going to chuck those. We don't need them. We have this T, which is going to go on the output side, which is right here. And we have this input adapter, which the input adapter is going to be used to adapt to the OE brake line coming from that master cylinder. So both of these are NTP, so let's get those prepped in a similar way that we prep the calipers. All right, this guy is prepped and ready to go. So next up, what we're gonna do is go ahead and fit our calipers. So we're gonna start by attaching the brake brackets to the car. We'll then put the rotors on. We'll put the calipers on, then we'll attach our lines. We will route our extra long rear line to get that into position in the T where this is eventually going to go. Now we're gonna keep everything that's connected on the car connected for now so we're not leaking brake fluid everywhere. And then finally, we'll replace the T and then that's gonna be the messy part. Let's go. All right, so we're gonna put the bracket in. Looks like we got a torque wrench. What's the torque wrench set to?
So the torque wrench is set to 40 foot-pounds.
Okay.
And we also have Loctite red high temp.
All right, let's get rolling here. So how does this thing orient? We're gonna put this on.
It really only goes on one way, and and it goes on the front side, not the back side. And then your bolts will come in through the back and thread into the front here.
Okay, and then you got an extra hole on the bottom there for that's one of the caliper bolts, and then this little guy in the middle.
Yep, these two are your caliper bolts.
All right, let's go. All right, brackets on, super easy. We got our Loctite, we got our Nordlock washers. Those are torqued to 40 foot-pounds. Now the moment we've been waiting for is this massive rotor on the rear of the car. God, that thing looks good. Look at the size of this thing. That is massive. All right, let's fit the caliper. All right, so fitting the caliper, we have the other bolts. Now I know the bolts we used on the bracket are the same as the OE thread, which is an M10 by 1.5, I think. Now these are a 7/16 14, I believe. So those are a little bit bigger. And then what's the torque setting on these?
45 foot-pounds.
All right. Now, we put the rotor on before the caliper because the caliper fits over the rotor. So that's a sequence. Once that's on, we'll go ahead and move over to the other side. Then we're gonna fit our brake lines. All right, we got this thing installed and it is massive. Look at that caliper with this giant 11.75 inch rotor to match the front of the car. Next up, we'll go ahead and route the brake lines. So we got two different brake lines here. We got the short one, which we'll go ahead and mount that to the passenger side. And then the long one's actually gonna get mounted on the driver's side. And we'll go ahead and follow the OEM hard line all the way over to this T. We'll go ahead and get this zip tied in place. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and thread this onto our fitting on the back of the caliper. Then we're gonna route this line through. Let's hop on the creeper, get that installed. All right, tighten that up here. Yeah, that seems good. All right. There we go. All right. So for now, we have a couple different options. So this is the OE hard line that's coming through. We are going to disconnect that. You could wait and route this through the same hole where the OE line was. We're just going to use this other hole in the subframe, which you see here, and then we're going to go ahead and feed this line all the way across where the OE hard line is up here on the top of the subframe. We'll just route that all the way along to the other side by the T. So we have our adapter bracket tied to our bias adjuster. Now what we're going to do is unbolt the stock T that we have right here. We have two 10mm bolts. We're going to just push this out of the way, go ahead and connect up our lines for the new kit, and then all we'll have to do is swap that one hard line, and then we can uninstall the previous system. All right, we went ahead, we have our bias adjuster in place, all the lines are connected, now the dirty part. So we have our pan ready to catch in the brake fluid. We are gonna crack the line on the factory T and then put that line into the brake bias adjuster. Let's go.
All right, no more leaks.
So now the new system is all connected. What we're gonna do is uninstall the system that was in the car, and then gonna slap some brake pads in, then we can bleed the system. Now, before we pop our pads in here, I am gonna clean these rotors. So I have my non-chlorinated brake clean. This is the first time I'm actually gonna use this stuff to clean brakes, but we're gonna use that to clean the outside as well as the inside rotor face. Make sure those are nice and clean so we don't have any contamination on our brake pads. All right, now if you've watched the previous videos, you know we've had a lot of luck with the SR11 pad from EBC. I've reached out to EBC and I asked what's gonna be a good pad to mate to the rear of this car. They mentioned the SR11, which is a good segue. If you wanna watch those videos, remember to like and subscribe below. Those videos are available on the channel. Now, for size comparison, I have one of our previous pads when we were running the DynaPro single. That's what we just took off of the car, and you can see the size difference between these two pads. It is monumental. Now, we've had a lot of luck with the DynaPro single running this much smaller pad, but we think we're gonna get way more life out of these much larger, I think these are the 7420 pad shape overall. We got a 20 millimeter thickness, and overall we think that these are gonna perform better, and it makes a lot of stuff universal with the front. We're gonna end up running the same rotor, the same hat, and frankly, the same pad shape. So if we're at the track, it's gonna be really easy to keep track of the spares, versus right now I have a bunch of extra brake pads. I have a bunch of stuff for the DynaPro singles, and then a bunch of stuff for the Wilwood Superlites and the AFCOs for the front. Nonetheless, let's go ahead and get these pads installed. So, pretty easy with these. This is a brand new caliper, so we're just gonna remove this bridge bolt, set that down, slide our pads in place. There we go. There's one. And two. Perfect. Now, this does have a lock style nut, but we are going to put a little bit of Loctite Red just to ensure that this thing is not going to come apart on us. All right, it is time to bleed the brakes. Now I cannot find my nice new bleeder bottle. Nonetheless, my water bottle with a hose, it's been with me for a few years, so we'll end up using that. Nonetheless, before I dive into that, I wanna get this bias adjuster cranked all the way down, which you see here, it's turned all the way in, and that's gonna allow full pressure to the rear of the car while we're bleeding. Once we're done bleeding, we're gonna go ahead and turn that knob all the way out so that we can use that to later dial in our rear bias with this new setup. Let's get bleeding. All right, and that's a wrap. Last step, going ahead and adjusting this adjuster all the way out, and then I moved it in about 3 turns, which is about 40% of the overall ability of this proportioning valve to proportion. So we're gonna give that a try and test it out. Remember to like and subscribe for more videos. Now, one final shot, I do actually have the stock pad here, and you can see the size comparison between the OE pad and the pad we're moving to, which is the Wilwood 7040 or 7420 pad shape, and the overall thickness of these pads. These things are massive, and not only should that significantly help with pad wear overall, reduced expenses, make things simpler, but I should have plenty of thermal capacity in the rear overall. And I gotta say, this thing looks absolutely incredible. And it actually reminds me a lot of my Evora. Now I know the Evora isn't a supercar, but I have these big calipers in the rear, and I absolutely love that. And now we have it on our Miata, which I think is really cool. So I appreciate everybody for watching. I'm really excited to get this tested out on the street, and then we're gonna take it to the track. Thanks for watching.